I'll introduce us.
Alrighty. I wanted to make a list of things to speak of, but I had to scramble. I was out of time today.
Okay, we're live. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Heathen Hour. So, Godless Cranium is unable to join us this evening, unfortunately, because he is doing charity work, like the awful, immoral atheist that he is. He is
Right.
off supporting charity. So, everybody admonish him. Just go on Twitter and tell him what an awful person he is for
Yeah.
skipping out on Heathen Hour and not understanding what priorities are and doing charity work instead.
It's
But
been terrible.
instead this evening we have the lovely Paulogia as our guest co-host. Paul has been willing to step in for us, and we are actually going to be hosting the Heathen Hour for the first time on the Shannon Q channel this evening. Just to let you know, Paul will be monitoring the chat. We are monetized now on the Shannon Q channel. This video will not be up for long. Because it will be taken down and put on the Heathen Hour channel and be streamed on the podcast sites after viewing. So if you are seeing this online, you're one of the lucky ones, because we don't keep these online on the channels where we're streaming them anymore. We put them all on the Heathen Hour. So if you do have a super chat, Paul will be monitoring them. And this evening we have Donovan Neal here, and Donovan has a channel that I believe is called Mechanical Soul, and we are going to talk
Oh,
about why Donovan feels as though theism isn't a religion. So Donovan, take a moment to introduce yourself to everybody and tell them what your channel is all about and what you're here to talk about.
my name is Donovan Neal. The channel is called Soul Mechanics. For some reason, it won't pop up if you search it. You have to search an individual episode to actually find it. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm just not big enough yet. But you have that reversed. My ideology here is that religion is not theism. That
Oh,
religion is actually anti-theist. In its basis is anti-theist. I mean, at the very core of religion, it's designed to disconnect you from reality. It's designed to disconnect you from what God would really be. Were we to consider there being a real God, which I do.
okay. So you would consider yourself a theist,
Right.
but you wouldn't consider yourself religious?
No, I practice the elder cultures traditions, Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, but it's insofar as Christianity and the Muslim and the newer modern religions are concerned, I have a personal vendetta against them.
A personal vendetta. Why would you say that you have a personal vendetta?
Well, because God is a friend of mine and they're trying to kill it.
God is a friend of yours. Okay. So you say the Hindu religions, that those are not monotheistic religions. The only monotheistic religions that I'm familiar with would be the Abrahamic religions.
Right.
And you seem to think that they're non-theistic religions, but you say God is a friend of yours. Do you believe in multiple gods or an individual monotheistic God?
Well, if you want to speak about multiple gods, I believe there's a possibility that there could have been entities that were considered to be gods at some point. There's various theories abound about that. Alien theories, just pharaohs and such, kings that were regarded as gods. That's all just it's up in the air. But insofar as an actual, real, existing God goes, there I experience a living force in the world, something that communicates with me, it guides me, it directs me, it's there for me, it helps me out, it gives me guidance through synchronicities. Do you know about synchronicities?
I understand that the word synchronicity, so I'm not sure what context you're using it in here.
Well, actually, Donovan, I'd love to hear, before we get too deep into chats, I'd love to actually know that I'm on the same page with who I'm talking to. So I'd love if you could define for us a few things. If you could define what God is, define what theism is, and define religion, and then I guess synchronicity. So those four definitions I'd love to get from you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Uh, God would have to be the initial consciousness. If consciousness exists, and it very evidently does, then there is only one consciousness. So I mean, there's really only one soul. We're all sharing it. We all have pieces of it. We all are pieces of it, like a fractured identity disorder. You could say God is a single soul with a fractured identity disorder that becomes this everything, all everything that we are. And insofar as synchronicity is concerned, it's basically a practice of kind of reading cues in the world, things that will pop up that will kind of guide you, that will influence you. The term was coined by Carl Jung in reference to when things happen that seem coincidental to your own psychology, when you happen to be thinking of something and then it pops up in the world. You happen to think of a friend and then they call you. You're thinking of a certain vehicle and you see it all over the place, that sort of thing. He referenced it in concern to or in reference to coincidence, which people tend to think that coincidence is just coincidental is meaningless. No, coincidence, the very word, means to coincide. So synchronicity in and of itself is kind of redundant at that point. It's just coincidence. It's things that happen that are kind of guiding you. And from what I can tell, and the people that I work with, we all witness this every day. The world will guide you. The world is alive. It will speak to you. It will direct you if you just pay attention. It will give you hints and tips. A song that you hear on the radio that will give you the answer to a question you've been thinking of. That sort of thing.
So you think that things are placed in your path for a reason?
I think everything's placed in my path for a reason. I think that reason is the bottom line. I would say that reason itself is God.
Okay, so if you think that things are placed in your path for a reason, so you hear a song on the radio and that gives you the answer to a question. And I also heard you say earlier that coincidences, people make a mistake by saying a coincidence doesn't have meaning, but I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that the correlation causation problem, that just because two things correlate, just because you see them even occurring frequently at the same time together, that doesn't mean that in any way one is causing the other. That the same can be said for coincidences. Just because two things coincide and and it happens to be a good or bad happenstance, that doesn't mean that there's any sort of causality that was leading towards that happenstance. Do you recognize that, or do you think that every time that there is a coincidence that there's a reason for it?
It does not mean that, essentially, but then at the same time, it does not mean that. So I mean, if you decide.
Then it doesn't necessarily mean anything. If it doesn't mean that and it doesn't not mean that, then it's still just a coincidence, because you can't infer in this case any sort of causality.
Right, but if you do in fact go ahead and treat it as though there is causality behind it, and you follow it, it will happen repeatedly. It will continue to happen again and again and again. And everyone that I've worked with, that I've taught this to, has experienced the same thing. This will happen. If you treat it as though there is a meaning to it, it's almost as though the world is attempting to communicate with you and you're ignoring it for the most part. But if you pay attention to it, it will communicate with you more and more and more. It wants to. It loves you.
Do you think that could potentially be some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you're imbuing meaning onto things, so you're looking at something and saying to yourself, I believe that this thing has some sort of inferential meaning. When you believe that, and it's incorporated into an overall belief schematic that you have, it would be easy to over extrapolate and potentially infer more causation into things that are arbitrary. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, and that's okay. So you're inferring causation into arbitrary things?
I'm inferring that you are creating the causation as you move along. You are the cause.
Okay.
You are the influential force. God is you.
Okay.
God is through you.
Go ahead.
We have a super chat from Godless Engineer. Thank you.
Oh my God, my first super chat, by the way. Thanks, GE. Go ahead, Paul. Sorry, I get excited.
And he's asking Donovan, is this like Hyperionism? Also, hey, Paul and Shannon.
Hi, G.
So do you know?
I'm not familiar with the term.
So Hyperionism, just a quick Google here. Hyperionism is about creating yourself into the best version of yourself that you can possibly be, to self-actualize, take
Yeah,
your inner infinite potential and bring it forth into the world. Is that basically what you're talking about?
exactly.
So there is a label for what you are espousing to, and that's Hyperionism. You may want to, if you're looking to have a cause, you may want to look to enlist all the people who are already using that label.
All right, thank you. That's a good idea.
Um, so I didn't quite get your definition though of theism. You seem to be using a definition of.
Let me posit a consideration. Uh, has anybody ever considered that maybe God is a backseat driver in all of this? That maybe God is not some all-controlling, omnipotent being. That in fact, God did give us unconditional love and free will, and it can only kind of sit back and watch as we sort of abuse it.
Sure,
We have the choices to do whatever we want, and we harm ourselves, we harm each other, and God gives us the power to do that, but it can only kind of sit back and watch as we do.
So a non-interventionalist God, a God that are you suggesting? You said he can only. So are you suggesting he's incapable, or it is incapable of intervening, or it chooses not to?
I don't like to use the term he.
That's why I opted for it. Yeah.
Inferring that it's a he or she is insulting to it, in my opinion.
Okay, sure. So, brush past that and answer the question. If you don't mind answering the question, are you inferring that it's incapable or disinterested?
Well, that it is incapable by decision, that it has given us this free will. I mean, of course, if God were this force in the world that can do anything, of course it could do whatever it wanted to, but it doesn't. What it does do is give us the option, allow us the decision, and allow us to decide whatever we want, and we pretty much just kind of abuse it. We like God is like a child that we're abusing, a child that is evolving, growing with us. We are all a part of it as one entity, and we are pretty much just kind of,
so
putting it in.
Donovan, are you aware of the word deism?
Deism?
Yeah, deism or deist. Are you familiar with that term? So that's a term where people who believe in a supreme being, but that supreme being does not basically interact with the world. Is that basically what you're espousing?
No, I'm saying it interacts with the world every passing moment. You're just not paying attention to it.
You can see why this is confusing, though, because you said that he doesn't intervene because of free will, or it. I'm so sorry. It does not intervene because of free will. Yeah. However, it's constantly intervening in every passing moment. Can you understand how, from my perspective, that may seem like a contradictory statement?
But I'm saying it's not necessarily intervening. It's influencing. It's just.
Is influencing not just some sort of synonym for intervention or involvement?
No, because intervention would imply that it was, imposing itself upon the situation.
So it can be involved.
It is involved. It's involved with you. You communicate with it. Like, for example, consider your body, the relationship that you have to your body. You talk to yourself all the time. Do you ever consider that maybe your body is actually a separate entity from what you are, and you're talking to it?
No. My body. I constitute my body. My emotive expression is an emergent property of cognition, and cognition is how I communicate. I guess to a certain degree with myself.
Right. Try it.
Try what?
Considering your body to be a friend rather than exactly what you are.
To be separate from me?
In a manner of speaking, but no, not divided. There is no division. That's the ultimate motto behind everything we're working with, is that there is no division here. There is no real division. Even the rift between atheism and theism, there is no actual division. For the most part, with the argument between creationism and evolution, creationism, the idea of it, God created the world in 6 days and all that nonsense, that's hogwash. That's ridiculous.
Okay.
But creation in and of itself is the process. Evolution would be the process by which creation unfolds. It's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. There is no real argument. It's a hallucination.
Okay. I'm having a bit of disparity and incongruence in following some of your arguments. I hope you can respect that. I'm doing my best.
I'm trying not to argue.
Or for some of your points.
But okay.
So Shannon, we're getting a lot of comments. Are you able to? Unfortunately, I'm not able to go into the control panel and adjust the volumes, but I'm hoping that maybe you can go into the control panel.
I can try.
And turn up our guest.
I can do my best.
I can always speak louder. I can get closer, or whatever it takes.
Okay. The chat's having a hard time hearing you, Donovan.
Okay, I've just turned Donovan up full blast.
Am I loud enough?
Hopefully that's better.
But keep speaking loudly, I think would be great. Appreciate it.
Yes, please. Yes. You don't have a microphone, so it's difficult.
Speak loudly. My neighbors are assholes, so.
Okay. Fair enough. Hopefully the chat can hear you better. I can't see the chat right now, so.
Neither can I. All I see is you.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
No, you guys.
Beautiful.
Don't worry about that. No, I generally don't monitor the chat too much during conversations because I want to be able to engage in the person that I'm speaking to.
Well, it's not disappointing. You look very nice.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad I didn't disappoint you aesthetically. So you can understand how there's some disparity from my perspective regarding your perceptions of, I mean, it's confusing. So let me start by asking some questions if you don't mind. So Donovan, where did you come to your conceptualization of God, and what do you define God as? I think that's very important in order for us to be able to continue a coherent conversation.
That's something that I try not to tell people because but I'll go ahead with it. Fine. I think as I just said before, I think that God is a single entity existing in a void, creating a world that really doesn't know where it is or what it's doing, is just kind of playing it by ear and has this fractured identity disorder. I think that God is broken and crazy and doesn't have a fucking clue what it's doing, but is trying to make it through as best it can.
Interesting. Okay. Do you come to that just based on observation? So your perceptions of the world?
On observation and on, communications that I received from the world, things that I've seen in dreams, all the training that I've had throughout my life. It's all led to the same thing. Although there are varying, there's differing theories in my head as to what may be actually happening insofar as an absolute situation is concerned. And that's what we're searching for with our group, by the way, which, can I take a moment and promote, we're trying to provide the local area with natural remedies to get people off of drugs. So we're launching an anti-addiction
natural
campaign.
remedies to get people off of drugs.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not sure if I can get behind that being promoted here unless I know exactly what the natural remedies are. I studied neurological.
It's called Mitragyna speciosa, and it's a natural, healthy alternative to narcotics that people have been using for a long, long time.
When you say narcotics, what do you mean? What neurotransmitter does it act on? Donovan, I'm very hesitant because I've studied neuropharmacology and neurology, so I'm intensely hesitant to promote an alternative to narcotic use on my channel and my podcast unless I know significantly more about it than the fact that it's a natural alternative.
Well, I'm going to tell you, A and B, you don't have to promote it. I just want to.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying I'm hesitant to allow you to promote it. I'm so sorry. But could you elaborate more? I'm interested to hear about it. I'm open.
It's called Mitragyna speciosa, or more often referred to as kratom or kratom. It's kind of new in the area in America. It's kind of new, but it's been around for centuries, and it acts on the same sort of receptors in the brain that opiates act upon, except it's actually healthy and it's good for your digestive system.
Why is it healthy?
We can tell it has no negative effects. We have scientific studies to back this up. It has no negative effects upon the body. It's perfectly safe.
Who is we? I'm afraid I can't allow you to go on without knowing who is we and where are the scientific studies.
You could refer to the American Kratom Association. The AKA will have all the links and references to that.
Okay, so Donovan, you know that it's dangerous to promote alternative medications in lieu people who have narcotics addictions, and what type of narcotic addiction is it that you're speaking of as well? That's an important concern.
From what we gathered, this seems to work with just about anything.
Just about anything. They all act on different neural receptors, Donovan. So this is troubling to me. This is troublesome, Donovan.
But if you look into it, you'll find that
I've looked into it. I studied neural pharmacology, Donovan. So
I mean, this big substance.
If I look into this substance, I will find that it acts on all neurological receptors simultaneously and helps the digestive system.
It is effective to get people off of just about
so any it will help you with both a stimulant and a depressant.
Yes.
That is impossible, Donovan.
It can act as both, in fact.
Actually,
it's happening.
A quick Google of this says that the FDA bans this as a banned substance, that the FDA warns this is very dangerous.
No,
Donovan, no.
I'm on the FDA website right now, Donovan. I'm on the FDA website right now.
They're selling it on the corner store right now, right here.
Then they shouldn't be, and it should be banned because that is physically impossible. That something can be both a stimulant and a depressant simultaneously.
Okay,
Donovan,
we've done all the studies.
I will not allow you to promote that. Flat out. Okay. I won't. I will not be a part of that.
Just say then, in lieu of that we are trying to save people from being hooked on addictive, serious.
That's noble, Donovan. I understand the nobility of it, and perhaps that you don't understand
the actual substance, but I will say that we can help people with addictions if they wish.
Not if they're using this, Donovan. No, won't allow it. I won't. I can't in good conscience allow it. No, I'm so sorry, Donovan. I'm so sorry. I respect you coming here, but I will not allow somebody to suggest that they can use an alternative substance to help with any addiction.
You said you studied neuropharmacology.
I have.
You agree with the use of SSRIs?
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors? Yes, I do in certain circumstances. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Of course I do.
Okay. I personally think that those are exceptionally dangerous. And
why is it that you think? Do you understand how SSRIs operate?
I don't understand entirely, but I do understand.
Do you understand even on a basic level how they operate?
People have been affected in such a way as to do very, very damaging things because of these drugs. And it's messing with the brain in ways that we don't really understand.
We very much understand a lot about how selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. You seem to be making some.
Why do we have to ban another one every few years? Because we find
don't have to ban another selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor every few years, Donovan. And if you are going to suggest that banning a substance means it's dangerous, the substance that you just promoted as the alternative is banned.
It's not banned.
So that would make you hypocritical.
I'm putting a link in the chat.
You're getting the information that you're looking at, but no, it's not banned.
I'm getting the information from the American Psychiatric Association.
They're trying to ban it.
Psychological Association.
I apologize.
I would appreciate it, Donovan, if you would. I'd be happy to have a chat with you about how selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and those are not the only type of medication that people can use for depressive disorder. They can also use MAOIs.
Right.
They can also use tricyclics. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors are used in very specific circumstance. Unfortunately, you can't, like I said on Professor Stick's video, you can't check your resting neurotransmitter levels like you check the oil in your car. So it's very, very difficult to understand exactly which neurotransmitter is in a deficient state. So in certain circumstances, if it is not in fact serotonin, please let me finish because this is important based on what you said. If in certain circumstances, in several circumstances, it is not it's not the serotonin receptors, because SSRIs only really work if it's the receptor that takes the serotonin in is not functioning correctly and isn't taking enough of it in. If that happens, then the presynapse takes the serotonin back up, and the presynapse thinks that it's producing too much serotonin and lowers production. So you have a synapse that like a receptor that's not absorbing enough serotonin, and then a presynapse that thinks it's producing too much, and that causes the deficiency, and that causes most cases of depression. And I'm even hesitant to say most, a significant portion. You can also have acetylcholine imbalances, or you can have some sort of imbalance in dopamine. You can have a dopamine imbalance. You can have an overproduction.
I'm aware of these things,
which lowers serotonin production naturally, which is why the SSRI won't work. But you can't just take somebody's blood and find out what their resting neurotransmitter level is, which is why we do monitored inferential programs. And I will admit, there are doctors that do not do what they should. There are psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors who do not do what they should. And those are the cases that we hear of. But what you should be doing is monitored low dose inferential administration of initially probably an SSRI, and then monitoring for improvement so that you can't affect the neurotransmitter levels too much.
Right.
Because an SSRI essentially blocks the presynapse from taking the serotonin back up inside of it. So it stays in the synaptic gap so that it can be absorbed. So I understand how the SSRIs work, Donovan. Now, I understand. I have a degree in psychology, and I studied neural pharmacology for a year. I understand because I was going to work with autistic children.
Thank you for teaching me that.
I appreciate it. Now, I would like, and it's very important to me, that you no longer, unless you fully understand neurochemistry, push something as a substitution for abusive drug use that has been banned by the FDA. And please no longer say that it can be both simultaneously a stimulant and depressant, or act on stimulants and depressant and on all neurotransmitters, because that is dangerous and impossible. And if people believe you, you could hurt them, Donovan. I really want you to recognize that.
Like I said, A and B, it has not been banned. I'll say that for the final time. It has not been banned. We are actually fighting the ban right now.
Then it has been banned. If you're fighting the ban, then it has been banned. And I put a link in the chat where the FDA is pressing charges against people selling this because it's illegal.
All right. Well, I'll have to look into that because that must have happened this very moment.
May 22nd, 2018. Yes.
We put out a petition last night for it. So I mean, that must have happened today. But
it was May 22nd. It wasn't today. Donovan, I appreciate you come, and I respect you. I didn't realize that these were your positions. I would like to have a conversation with you to help you change them. I think that perhaps your position is based on not understanding neurological conditions and what acts upon neural receptors. And I'm happy to have that discussion with you.
Okay, that'd be great. That would be excellent. But pretty much what I'm trying to do here with this whole event is I'm trying to coordinate. I'm trying to network people. You guys, the atheist movement, if you want to call it that, on YouTube, you guys are doing a hell of a job fighting, the ridiculousness of Christianity and modern religions. And I appreciate that because that's my fight too. And so, I mean, we may not have the exact same beliefs insofar as theism is concerned or whatnot, but on one hand, we're still working for the same cause, and especially Godless Cranium, as I said, he and I have a lot in common. I wanted to speak with him about that. Hopefully I'll get a chance to at some point. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I would urge you to give it a shot. The things that I've suggested, working with synchronicities, give it a shot. See if you don't see something alive in the world. Because you don't, my problem with the atheism, the entirety of atheism, is that you see Christianity and you see how damaging and destructive and disgusting it is, and so you throw away spirituality altogether.
That's not true.
Well,
so you don't think that an atheist feels like they could be spiritual?
Well, I haven't seen that. I've seen them.
Have you watched this podcast? The very first podcast that we did was about atheism and spirituality.
I've seen a lot of atheists raise arguments against, as I've said, the elder culture's traditions that are not promoting any sort of imposing dictatorial God figure, just because they are spiritual in nature. They are not actually even religions. So if that is not the case, then I'd love to talk about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry to interrupt. I feel like atheists can, in fact, have spiritual experiences, and many would profess that they have or currently do. But I think that there's a conflation between introspection and spiritual experiences, and also perceptual dissonance and spiritual experience. So I think that it's all a matter of what you attribute to an experience. And you can attribute that experience to an external cause that's unknown and label it as spiritual and just identify that it's unknown, or you can attribute it to an external experience and simultaneously say, I've decided I know the cause. And substantively, the experience itself is the same between the two people. The only difference is the inference that one knows the cause and the other does not.
Well, we don't actually. That's the point. Okay. We don't know what we use the term God. You can toss it out if you want to. It doesn't matter. We're just talking about whatever it is that's existing, the life in the world, the consciousness, and we are investigating it. We don't know what it is. We don't have the first clue what it is. I don't think it knows what it is. So we're launching an investigation into the nature of reality itself. That's the point. And we're trying to network people who are interested in contributing to that.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate an inquisitive nature.
I that's my own beat. That's my personal thing. I have a personal beef with Christianity. I intend to take them down. Anybody who wants to help me, welcome aboard.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in taking them down, air quotes. I would prefer that I don't. Yeah, so. Sorry, go ahead, Donovan.
It's the religion. It's the concept. It's the values behind it. They're designed to disconnect you. They're designed to divide us. They're designed to damage us. And I mean, anybody who takes a serious look at the Bible, I mean, for crying out loud, it's deplorable.
The Bible is deplorable. Yeah.
It's filled with it. It's just, there's almost nothing good about it. The God that's introduced in that, it gives the idea of God a terrible, terrible name. And that really makes me, forgive my language, it pisses me off.
Right. See, like I said, I'm not interested in, I would like people to be able to come to their own decisions autonomously and contribute to them making those autonomous decisions, so that it would be my preference that there be no people with a religious affiliation hindering their cognition, or their decision-making process for a multitude of reasons. It would take me years to articulate them as well as I would like. However, taking them down, being an active force against the religion to prevent people from being able to have the free practice of religion goes against everything that I believe, because I believe in individual autonomy. So if
I apologize. That was wrong for me to say.
What I mean, taking them down. I understand it. It's just a difference in vernacular. So it's probably just a matter of the delivery of your message. So I
want to enlighten people as to what's really happening with this religion, to give them the option to choose for themselves, because most of them are born into it or forced into it.
Okay.
I mean,
Sure.
Christianity itself was forced upon us at penalty of death. That's the only reason it made it. Got so
Mm,
big because
I
people
would think.
threatened
I would. There's an
exactly.
argument to be made that that's not necessarily that's not the case. I didn't become a Christian for that
You were a
reason.
Christian?
Very much so. Yes, I was an
Hmm.
Anglican.
As was I.
He
Most
wasn't
of
an
you were.
Anglican though.
No, not an English.
He was a Mennonite.
Were pretty just in the past, I guess, right?
Recent past for
Yeah, I
him,
think,
slightly less recent for me.
and both of us would identify ourselves as anti-theists. So so we're not necessarily.
That's where I get it. That's where I get the problem is that you're identifying yourself as anti-theist, where I'm not sure you understand the concept of what theism really is. I
Well,
mean, you
I've asked you 3 times to define theism. Now, I would love to hear what you mean by theism.
right. When you say anti-theist, what I hear is anti-self, anti-consciousness, anti-creation. I don't think that's a good label to use. I think that's a mistake.
But that's not a definition of theism. That's just you referring to us what you assume an anti-theist is. Can you give us a definition of theism?
Yeah.
Okay.
But my identification of theism would be belief in life and love itself, in whatever it is that is existing, this living presence in the world, and I feel as though it's almost like a melancholy love story that this presence is wanting us to communicate with it, to commune with it, and we just ignore it all day long, every
You
day.
understand that that's a redefinition of the contextual understanding of theism for anybody who's holding the anti-theist position. If anti-theism was just, love and understanding between people, I don't think anybody would stand against it. But that's not what a theistic perspective is. It's ascribing to a specific set of religious dogmas.
Exactly. But see, these religious dogmas, they're
So
actually
you're
designed to disconnect you from the reality of what I'm saying God is.
so you would be
They're
an anti-theist. However, you've redefined the word theist so that
I
anti-theist doesn't hold any meaning in it doesn't hold the same meaning to you as it does to anybody else who would reasonably ascribe to the term.
that's what I'm saying here. I'm going ahead and redefining it because I'm allowed to.
You can. You can redefine it. But going into a conversation, if you're going to redefine the terms of every word that's involved in the conversation, you can recognize how that might make a conversation difficult to have with you, though, Donovan, right?
Just that word, though. Just that word.
Just that word? Okay. Well, that's an important word in this conversation because it's the crux of the conversation. So if you ask me, am I against people loving each other and feeling one with one another and wanting the best for one another, I'm going to say no.
Right, of course.
So does that mean that I can no longer say that I'm an anti-theist?
Well, no, because the when I speak to theism, what I'm talking about is this whatever it is that's existing, this presence that's communicating with us in the world,
Sure.
that most people are unaware of. And if as I said, if you take a chance at practicing these synchronicities, following them, paying attention to them, they will happen repeatedly. You will find that the world will communicate with you. It's alive. It is paying attention to you. It cares about you. The living world is alive. It's not the way that people.
So the world has some sort of sentience.
Yes,
that's exactly. Directed towards
everyone.
People. Everything.
Every last.
And what are you basing that on? Just intuition?
Experience.
Okay. So what about your experience? So I would say that the experience and the intuition were probably synonymous in this context.
Well, I don't know, because I've failed to follow my intuition before and I've experienced terrible things.
Okay. So this is a consistent experience that the world does what precisely?
Just that it's here. It's communicating with you. It's a friend to you.
How so?
I don't know if it wants anything specifically. I don't know if it's guiding anything. I don't know what it is. I don't know what its story is. I have so many different theories about what could actually be going on in regards to what this consciousness is, how it came to be. But essentially my point is that it does exist, regardless of what you want to call it or what you think it is. It's there. And the programs that I'm working with, that I started, the Remnants of Tomorrow program specifically, and the Status Initiative program, are we're just investigating it together, and sharing our experiences in that regard, and maybe hoping to come to a common understanding as to what we, a shared experience that we all have consistently.
Okay. So there's a lot to unpack with almost everything that you say, Donovan. There's a lot to unpack. Okay, so shared experiences. It seems like there's a lot of connections based on coincidence being made. So you've experienced a coincidence, and somebody that you've connected with via online or however, whatever, has also had a similar experience, and thus that constitutes to you evidence
Well,
of your assertion.
happened on hundreds and hundreds of people, yes.
Hundreds and Okay, so hundreds and hundreds of people have heard a song, like you said earlier, that triggered some sort of cognition in them, that helped them think about something relevant to them, and then made a decision that led down a path that was potentially positive. So to your mind, that's evidence that something is acting upon the world to put that song there at that exact moment for that person so they could make that decision. But it's difficult. But let me follow your logic through. In order for that to take place, somebody else's free will, because you've espoused a free will on numerous occasions here. So somebody's free will would have had to have been impeached upon in order for the choice for that song to be played on the radio. The person who was making the choice to play that song, somebody would have had to intervene to make them make a different choice so that they would have to play that song. And then that song was played, knowing the only logical way that song could have had an influence is if the person who impinged upon the free will of the person who was going to play that song also knew that song would trigger something that would cause the person listening to the song to make the decision that they did. Otherwise, that entire convoluted path becomes irrelevant. I understand the need, the desire, the want to look at the world and imbue meaning, because it's beautiful and it's fantastic and it's wonderful. And there are so many things that don't make sense. And we're encoding machines. We're pattern formation machines. We want things to have meaning. We want us to have meaning. We want the world to have meaning. We want everything to have meaning. So I understand the need and the desire to imbue meaning on things, and to say what constitute evidence is that somebody else wants that too and had a similar experience, which is what I'm hearing here. However, I would love for you to identify that that's not always evidence that what you're asserting, or almost never is evidence for the fact that what you're asserting is the case. I can understand how it can feel like that, and it seems like that, and you want it to be that, and I can respect that. And there's been times in my life where I've wanted it too. There are times still today that I'm like, oh man, that song came up right at the moment that I was thinking about that person that reminds me of that song.
For some reason, you chose not to believe that.
Because I'm not certain you heard almost anything that I said.
Actually, you raised very, very cool there. The concept that perhaps the people, without knowing it, and of course we are using the entirety of our brains every passing moment. There's a lot of autonomous activity going on. There's what I'd call a sense of trajectory in play, where our brains are working things that we don't understand, like making our heart beat, making our lungs breathe.
That's the autonomic nervous system.
Right, yeah, but Carl Jung spoke to the collective unconscious and perhaps the subconscious coordinating. Perhaps the people themselves are in fact coordinating to make these synchronicities happen without knowing it. That's a possibility. In fact, that's a very awesome theory you just bring up.
The people
perhaps we're all coordinating, working together without knowing it.
Working together towards what? To what end? I'm finding it difficult to comprehend. I'm so sorry. I wish I could.
if we were perfectly lucid and we were aware of the choices we were making and how we were influencing other people and we were working together on it, then we could go ahead and decide to what end. But as it stands, who knows? It just is happening. We're investigating what purpose.
Us having an influence on other people? An accidental influence?
As you just said, everyone having an influence on each other collectively. That's actually...
I don't think... Well, yes. We all have a collective influence on one another, but it's not... There's no intent. There's no intention. You're inferring intent.
You don't know that
you understand no that there is no... that, nor do you, because there isn't an intent. When I make a decision, it's not part of a collective that's intended to have some sort of butterfly effect influence on somebody wherever. My intentions are purposeful. If I'm doing something, I'm having this conversation right now because I'm hoping that you and I and anybody watching can get something out of it, or might have more questions, or might be entertained. That there's an intent behind this choice. That if somebody hears this conversation, and has some sort of internal epiphany, that's not part of my intent. That's a tertiary affect of this conversation. I understand that that's a possibility in these conversations, but that's a tertiary affect. That's not the intent. You seem to be inferring conscious intent in every action that we take so that it can affect somebody in a deliberate way. A song playing on a radio that sparks a thought in somebody's head. We would need to know the unconscious thoughts of all other beings.
If everybody did have a collective unconscious, as Carl Jung posited, then in fact we would have that connection.
So you think
we do have that connection.
So you think there's a collective unconscious?
I don't understand why people would think anything otherwise. Why would we not have that connection? We know that plants have that connection. We know that plants think, feel, they have a connection to each other. Plants can communicate at distances. Why would we not?
Not in the manner that we do. They communicate.
We're acting. We know that we're doing things that we're not aware of.
We are doing things that we're not aware of. Okay, potentially, I can understand why you might say that, because to a certain degree, like, I'm not aware of my digestive system right now, but it's probably, I'm not aware of my heartbeat. I'm not aware of my internal organs. I'm not consciously activating my...
You're not aware of how this is going to affect the listeners.
No, certainly, because they exist external of me. I'm not aware of how it's going to affect me because I'm not omniscient.
Exactly.
Nobody is.
Right.
So, thus, we have a collective consciousness?
I'm not saying that I'm saying that there is not omniscience. I'm saying that we are in some kind of a collective, I suppose you could call it a collective dream state. We are sharing a consciousness, and no, we don't have omniscience. We are not aware of what we are doing. We're trying to figure it out, and I'm hoping to get everybody together to help each other figure it out.
I'm all for everybody getting together and helping each other. That we are on the same page with, Donovan. We are on the same page.
And we don't have to share beliefs. We just have to. I'm just hoping we can collaborate in assisting.
And I believe that you have good intentions. I firmly believe, based on this conversation and our previous interactions, that you have good intentions.
A lot of people believe in me. They don't believe that I'm real. They think I'm bullshit, and it's really insulting. So thank you for saying that.
I believe that you have good intentions, Donovan. I really do. I believe you have good intentions. I think that there are things that there's disparities between your belief structure and what I've come to understand as, the reality of neurochemistry, for example. And I'd be happy to have more conversations with you after this, because I'd really, especially like you not to promote that. I'd like to give you a broader understanding, just a high level understanding of why that isn't great. But we have about 8 minutes left. So first I'd like to ask, Paul's muted. I've kind of taken over. Poor Paul is the co-host. This is Paul's life. Paul's life is just me talking while he doesn't.
That's right.
Paul, I got to see your little head pop up, and I forget you're there. I apologize.
Well, in a way, the universe, I think, has helped you, Shannon, because both it was time to mow and my dog went nuts. So I think, that's probably Donovan would probably say that's a cue to let you take over and have the chat.
The universe intervened.
But Donovan, I guess, in terms of, I would also encourage you to, if you'd like to have better conversations with people, I would encourage you to perhaps adopt, even though Shannon and I hate definitional argument, anything else, I think, I would encourage you to adopt perhaps definitions that you don't have to spend time getting people on the same page you. Perhaps you could, rather than trying to completely redefine terms that exist, perhaps you could, come up with, utilize terms that already exist.
Yes, that we've already started doing that, actually, but thank you for that idea. Yes, that's precisely correct. That's a good idea.
Okay. So Paul's been monitoring the chat. So Paul, we only had the one super chat. Thank you, Godless Engineer. Yep. So for my first ever and only super chat. So yay. That's going in the laptop. Fine. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So did anybody else have any pertinent questions, or did you see any reoccurring questions, Paul, before we're done?
I guess the one topic that did come up in the chat is, would you liken what you're talking about to the Force from Star Wars? It sure sounded familiar to people. Perhaps you were talking about Yoda.
Yeah, I think that Star Wars is inspired precisely by this.
As someone who worked for George Lucas, I can assure you that it is not.
Yeah, so somebody who worked on the Star Wars film. Paul worked for Lucasfilm for many years. So
I did.
No,
but
inspired by.
Well, it was inspired largely by Joseph Campbell, and then combining the ideas from the Force from Buddhist influence, which if you're anti-religious, anti-theist, then you should probably be anti-Buddhist as well.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, these are the things that we practice. These are the things that we study. Taoism would be specifically what we're speaking to.
Okay, so you can understand, though, maybe this goes back to my suggestion, when you say that you feel all religions misrepresent God, and then you come back and you say, no, but not Taoism and not Buddhism. Like
modern religions, B. I don't consider Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism those to be religions. Those are philosophical methodologies. They don't impose any dictatorial God figure. I don't consider those to be religions.
Okay.
But then again, that's again my terminology again. So
sure. Okay. So you think that basically you would just what the Force is, that things are interested in the life force way. Do you think that there's an afterlife?
One of the I suppose you could call them factions of the initiative that works with what they call astral projection. I don't like that term, and they use the term out of body exploration. I don't like that term either because it doesn't make sense. But from what they found in their findings, yes, there may be an afterlife. I lean towards believing them, but I don't know for certain. It's a part of the investigation.
Okay. Sorry, now I do have to. We've got a few super chats in. First from 013.
Good job, Paul. I gave Paul one job.
Who pledged $5 us that.
What? I believe in reincarnation. I have memories of other selves that I believe are real. So,
okay.
I believe in that.
Okay, Paul wrote, just to interrupt really quickly, and then I'll let you finish your thought. Paul roboted. I know that because I heard it in my ears, and I know the people that were kind enough to send the super chats. I want to make sure that they are read. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you understand me now?
Yeah, but I can see them on my screen.
Okay, go ahead, Shannon.
Branch said second. Thank you, Branch. 0132 said super chats are pointless. Okay. I like them. They're gonna help me buy a laptop. Hopefully. So anyway, so Shane said, thank you, Shannon and Paul. And you're welcome, Shane. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. So I will let you two continue because I was interested in hearing the discussion. But you believe in reincarnation, and we have like 2 minutes left. So
oh wow.
Yes, it went fast, hey?
Did not succeed in compressing our time frame.
You did not. No. Too bad, eh?
I'll get there.
You'll get there.
I get better.
So, well, I guess we're pretty much at an end. Paul thank you very much for co-hosting today in lieu of Godless Engineer. And everybody go on Twitter and tell Godless Engineer what a lazy dolt he is. Unbelievable. Doing charity work. Can you imagine when he could have been having this conversation? And also don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on every podcast channel you can imagine. We are on iTunes, we are on Fireside, we are on a couple of other platforms. We are not yet on Spotify, but we are definitely on iTunes right now. So if you would like to see the back catalog of the Heathen Hour, you can go on those platforms and you can subscribe to it. And you can also please go and subscribe to the new Heathen Hour channel. We have our own channel specifically for the podcast. This will not be on my channel long because it will be uploaded to the Heathen Hour channel because that is now where we're housing our archives. And ultimately, once we have enough subscribers, we will be streaming live from there. So if you love the Heathen Hour, please make sure that you subscribe to that channel because ultimately that is where these podcasts will be housed. So I would just like to say thank you to Paul. And thank you very much to Donovan. All of the relevant links are in the description of this video right now. Thank you to the chat and the audience. Oh, Donovan, please, you can go ahead and have the second to last word before we go.
Soul Mechanics also works with what's called Kundalini, and that's a practice that deals with the nerve clusters, the major nerve clusters in the body, and the pineal gland, what people used to call chakras. I like to call them engines. So if anybody's interested in that, that's one of the specific things that we work with and we'd like to help people with.
Oh, Donovan.
And one last super chat from Rich Little, who gave you $25, Shannon, to say, get a good laptop. You deserve it.
Yay! Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm trying. I think that brings me up to like $300 now. So yay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. Awesome. I'll put out a video soon. I swear, I'm writing it. All right. Thank you very much, chat. Thank you, Paul, for co-hosting, and thank you, Donovan, for being here. And have a good night.